This month's podcasts are sponsored by Aubergine Legal. Do you sometimes worry that your business isn't meeting all its legal compliance requirements and wonder if you're ticking all the legal boxes? Are you losing sleep worrying about a piece of legislation that you may or may not be complying with? Perhaps you need some help with your client contracts or your data protection compliance. Or maybe you're worried that your website doesn't have the right documents or legal notices in the right place. Perhaps you have a brand that you want to protect with a trademark. How about if you could outsource it all and eliminate all of your worries? If so, then get in touch with Aubergine Legal, a friendly commercial legal consultancy offering practical and clear commercial legal advice without the overwhelming legal jargon, taking the worry away and helping you to protect your business and minimise your risks. Aubergine offers a free 30-minute consultation if you have any questions or want to find out if they can help, and you can access this link and book your free 30-minute call via the link in the show notes.
Welcome to the Bring Your Product Ideas to Life podcast. Practical advice and inspiration to help you create and sell your own physical products. Here's your host, Vicky Weinberg.
Today I have something really new and exciting we're going to be talking about on the podcast. Today I'm speaking to Donna Jackson, who is an influencer known as a Curious Mummy and founder of Suped Up Social, a digital marketing small businesses, startups and creatives. So as I mentioned, Donna is an influencer herself and she knows lots and lots about working with influencers, and today she's going to share all her tips about using influencers to help promote your products. This is such a fantastic episode. I think you're going to learn a lot, and there's lots of practical things that you can go away and do right away as well, which I absolutely love. So I'm going to stop talking now and introduce you to Donna. Okay, so hi Donna, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to have you here to talk about the topic of influencers. So before we get started, could you tell us all about yourself and who you are, please?
Yep. So I'm Donna. I'm an influencer. I have a blog called The Curious Mummy, which I think has been going for 5 years. I've stopped counting now. I've stopped counting with the greys. And that blog is centered around family life with my children and my husband, but mainly me and the children. And there's a big element of food and sustainability within the blog. So that's one part of me, and then the other side of me, I have a consultancy where I support small businesses, startups and creatives with their digital marketing strategies. And I manage clients, but I also train lots of clients, and that business is called Suped Up Social. So I'm a very busy woman, but it's all good. And today I am going to tell you all about influencer marketing and hopefully deliver some really sound advice, not only from an influencer's point of view, because I think it's really good to understand that, but also from a business point of view. So with the businesses that I work with, we do run influencer marketing strategies. And I think because I come from the other side, because I am an influencer and I work on this side, I understand the needs of a business, but I also understand those needs of an influencer. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I could talk more about me and how I got here, but I don't think that's why I'm here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. And actually the reason, one of many reasons I wanted you on today is because you have both sides of the spectrum, that you are an influencer and you work with influencers. That was one of the reasons I really wanted you on here today, because I think you've got a really unique perspective and I'm really excited that you can share it with us. I think a good place to start is, could you just explain to us what influencer marketing is, just for anyone listening who hasn't heard the phrase or has heard it but isn't entirely sure what we're talking about?
Okay, so in a nutshell, it's a part of social media marketing that endorses products and services. So you've got a person, it could be a celebrity, it could be, the lady down the road that you're following because she's got an amazing life and there's lots going on in her life. And that person would incorporate a product and service. So let's say it's your business, Vicky, in their lives and display that on their social profiles, on blogs, etc. And I'd say that they would represent that product in a way that's authentic. So, for instance, one of the things that I do a lot is work with lots of food brands, and I don't take food brands that that are not sustainable, that don't have that element and angle. So there's lots of things that I won't work with as an influencer, but it's making sure that that brand firstly represents me as an influencer, but secondly, I represent them. So I wouldn't want to take on a brand that doesn't have the brand values of my brand, and equally, I'm sure a brand wouldn't want to take me on if we didn't have aligned brand values. Sorry, I've gone on a tangent. So I'll do that a lot. So Vicky will need to pull me back.
That's fine. Thank you. Because I'm assuming that what we want is for both sides to be representing the product or service in a really positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the main key. It's like, that's the kind of, there's no secret to it, but that is the secret, is making sure that you're picking up a brand, or a brand is working with an influencer that, harnesses those brand values. I think like a lot of, there's lots of ways to find influencers. I know we'll go on to that, but I think it's really, really important to kind of understand your customer. So understanding what your business is about. So you might make, I'm looking at pens, you might make pens and they might be lovely and sustainable and made from sustainable products, etc. But and I know that you as a business owner are going to target people that that really encourage those values of a brand. They're buying it because they want to be more sustainable to the planet. I keep talking about sustainability, but it's just an example. And I would say that a reason you would want to work with an influencer that maybe using pens in their life. Let's say they've got small children. There might be a brand that's doing lots of activities with with their children. But they might have a lovely sustainable angle within their brand. Their followers may be coming into them because of those reasons. So you would always want to partner with a person that really does represent what your customer is about and what kind of what your brand is about. So I'd say that's probably quite a key thing when you're beginning to look at influencer marketing for your brand.
That totally makes sense. Thank you. Because I think one key thing I've picked up on what you've said is it is a partnership. So it has to work for both parties. So there's, you might think your product's amazing, and I'm sure your product is amazing, and it would be great to have this person use it because it's such a good product. If it doesn't fit in with their lifestyle or their ethos or who they are, then actually it's just not a good fit, is it?
Yeah, exactly. And if they don't readily talk about a specific value that you talk about a lot within your brand, it's going to feel foreign to that audience and they won't expect it. So if there's like Mother Pucker, for instance, she's very much about she is an influencer, but obviously there's a bigger dimension to her, and there's lots about flexibility in working. So a brand that, I don't know, a bike brand, for example, may be the wrong fit for her, because why would she start promoting anything to do with a bike when all she talks about is flexibility in the workplace? Unless she features her children on her brand and her blog, then maybe that would work. But I think it's really important to, if you found an influencer that you want to work with, look at what they're doing on a daily basis. Check out their stories, check out content they're making for their grid. I mean, I'm talking about Instagram, but they might be, more around on their website. So check out what they're doing on a day-to-day basis and see if you fit, that brand in any way. And would your consumers, does that person represent, your consumers? Because that's another way of looking at it. Somebody that would maybe come to me would probably be targeting females, I don't know, 35 to 45. I'm in that age bracket now, sadly. And they would, maybe with children, and I've got small young children, so it'd probably be somebody that's got, similar sort of demo to me. I live in London, so it could be that they're more a London centric brand. I mean, these are all sort of small things, but they're actually quite big things, because a lot of my following on The Curious Mummy are London-based followers. So it is really important to kind of look at those demographics, I think, but then also look at, who's following me. And I know a lot of the followers that are following me are, similar to me. So I put something out on my stories today for one of my clients, and she's a sleep consultant. She's absolutely lovely. And we did this reel about baby sleep cries. Anyway, I put it out on my stories, just because I know that there are some younger parents that are following me, and she's already had loads of people go over and check out her reel, which I'm so happy about. But I think it's because her brand is very similar to people that are following my brand. So if my children were a little bit older, that reel would probably be, completely redundant on my page and wouldn't work, and then I wouldn't be doing that person any justice. So sorry to go into those intricacies, but I think it's quite important to think about different layers of that person, because I think with a lot of brands, they're, if you are working with an influencer, whether you're paying them, whether you're gifting and paying, whatever the arrangement might be, I think, you've got to remember that you're putting out something, that person's going to represent your brand. You are physically using some of your budget to get that person, to get people into your brand. So it really has to make sure it's right. And I think a little bit of research is one of the big things that needs to be done with lots of brands that work with influencers, particularly small brands that work with influencers, because, budgets in the first couple of years are very, very limited.
Thank you for that. I have so many questions about finding influencers, but I'm going to hold off for now, because the next one I just wanted to cover, because I think it's important, particularly as it does seem like finding influencers is possibly more complex than it might look on the surface. So what would be good to have an understanding of now is sort of why is working with influencers a good way to promote your products? Because it does sound like it can be hard work. I don't think it's just going to be, you're not going to tell us just to send a couple of emails out and hope for the best. There is going to be obviously a lot of thought and research and work that goes into it. So why should we think about doing that? What the benefits are for us as a products business?
Right. Okay. So I've made a list because I was thinking about this. The why. There are loads of whys why you should, and I think if you can think about these, which I'm going to start talking to you about, I think it will then give you the understanding, the framework to go, right, okay, I am sure that I want to invest part of my marketing budget or part of my money for the year on working with influencers. So one of the things is working with an influencer will give you a bigger reach. So you are going to reach their audience. If they do a sterling job and you've got a continued relationship, so you might have worked on a paid influencer campaign with them, but they absolutely love you, you've nurtured this relationship, you may find that they will use your product and feature it without payment in the future, and that's where the authentic thing comes in. So just bear in mind that it gives you huge exposure to bigger audiences. And, if you kind of get into bed with them, I hate that phrase, but if you do, you're going to find that they're going to want to champion and support your brand, for everything. So it might be that you can afford one paid project, but you can't afford any more. But you want to work with them in the future, then it's definitely worth, just trying to build that relationship. So just remember, they can give you a bigger audience, give you a bigger reach. Also, working with an influencer can give you social proof. So let's say you've just started your product business and you've not had many customers, and they've you therefore haven't got many reviews, or you haven't had much social proof online that people are using your product. Using an influencer to do that job is going to be great, and then you can obviously repost that piece of content time and time again, because I think people now, they've got the mentality of, they might check out a Google review or an Amazon review on a certain product, but actually 9 times out of 10 they go into social media pages to get that social proof. So lots of females generally of a certain age group generally go to Instagram to have a look. I know there, for instance, I was looking at Hush today and I wanted to get a dress, but I wanted to make sure it was nice, so I was checking out how it looked on other women. So that I think is really, really important. It will build a nice level of loyalty and trust for your brand. So it's a really big reason why you could consider using influencer marketing. Also, if you've got the right influencer, you're going to grow a nice social following. So I'm just going to reel off names, so I hope you don't mind. But Emma Patton, who is a fashion influencer, she posts daily and there are lots of outfits, etc. But I know that lots of like fashion brands will go to work with her, and they do get a really, really good following. They will pick up new followers off the back of that. So and she's very good at promoting people, and I think that is quite key, that it can, if you're using the right person, will help you grow your social following. If you're using the wrong person and you pick up 1 or 2 followers from it, it might mean that they weren't right, the influence wasn't right, or the campaign or the product wasn't right. So there's lots of things to think about there, but it can grow your social following. Also, it can increase traffic to your website. That's ultimately what you're using social media for, is to kind of drive traffic for people to make purchase. So use it for that. Get people to click on links in bios or swipe ups to get people to your website. Also, another big thing about influence marketing, it talks directly to your audience. So for years and years and years, there was no sort of direct way of speaking to the audience, unless you were spending thousands of pounds on, radio, TV, all the above the line stuff. But now we don't have that problem, because we've got influencers, which are far cheaper to work with, to speak directly to your audience. So if you've got a brand that you've just launched and there's lots to, you kind of want to say all this stuff, you can do it through an influencer. And then ultimately, the main thing is to drive sales. So working with an influencer is, if you've got it right, it's going to help you drive sales.
Thank you so much for that. Let's talk a little bit now about how to find out which influencers you could or should be working with, because based on everything you said so far, and I've picked up on a few things. I think one is, it'd be good to talk about is the influencers audience, because we had a little chat before we started recording, and this is something I think people could easily fall into the trap of, is thinking, oh, this person would be a great person to use my products, but it might be that the people following that person aren't going to be the people that would buy your products, in which case the influencer may love your products and it might be really nice for them to use it, and they might genuinely like it, but actually it possibly isn't going to get you sales or website views or social media following or anything like that. And then I guess the other thing is how much do you need to think about, and sorry, I'm asking you so many questions, Donna, but how much do you need to think about where people are? I mean, should we just be looking on Instagram for influencers, for example, or are they in other places? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think the big thing which actually answers both your questions is, how well do you know your audience? When I work with all my clients, or if I work with people that we're training, the big question we work through is, how well do you know your audience? And I'm not talking about, oh right, this person's 39, she's got 2 kids, she's got a dog, she lives in South West London. This is part me, part not. I'm not 39, I'm a lot older. But I think what is quite important is to understand where your influencer is hanging out. Most people are online for a large part of the day. So where are they going online? Are they going to the BBC website? Are they going to, I don't know, are they going on Instagram? Do they spend most of the time on there? Are they on Twitter? Where are they going? In some ways, you will get them, depending on your understanding of that person. And also it's the time of the day. So let's just go back to the sleep consultant that I work for. We post a lot of her content out based on sleep schedules. So children have an algorithm, a circadian rhythm, which is very similar to Instagram's algorithm, completely mind-blowing. But we know that when we put content out at, say, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 times out of 10, babies are sleeping at that time, and mothers are getting their coffee and they're maybe wasting a bit of time on Instagram. So we know that's when we should be posting content. And also it's the content where they've had a terrible night's sleep. They either want to see some remedy or some idea of how to fix getting a better night's sleep. So it's always looking at what that content might be. Sorry, I'm going off slight tangents. I'm going to go back to your question. So what I'm trying to get to is you have to understand your audience. But I mean, I would, create like a documentation on who that audience is, get a Pinterest board, look at who they are, what they look like, are they married, are they not, really break down where they are and their patterns throughout the day. And I think sometimes it's nice to base it on somebody who you're targeting, and then you go through that level. Then I think then you can then understand who that is and what they're really interested in. So, you might, let's go back to the pen example. They might be interested in sustainable pens. I don't even know if there is one, but there is for this example. So they might be interested in a sustainable pen, and then you'd look at all their kind of values on top. So, they're probably going to be looking or following influencers that, are experts in that or talk about it, that offer really good tips for, a family, for the lady that's 39 that lives in South London. So, the mother that lives in South London. So, I think you really have to get under the skin of your audience in order to then work out who you want to work with in terms of influencer. And then finding those influencers, I think a really good way is looking at your current, if you're on Instagram, for example, look at who's following you. And you might have 400 followers, but probably a small percentage of those followers will be influencers. And if that is the case, brilliant. You've got somebody that firstly believes in your product and is following you for a reason. It might be simply because they like your brand, or it could be that in time they'd like to work with you, or they do just want to work with you. And I would look at that influencer. If someone you kind of think, okay, she's following me or he's following me, I quite like them. Have a look and see if they represent what your brand's about. Is there a way that you can create a really good, meaningful campaign? And what's the longevity of that? So I think the big thing to answer your question is just to get under the skin of your audience and find out who they're following. It might be that you pick your audience and you look at your following and you go, right, okay, there's a certain age demo of women, and I think, and a lot of them are following, they're following lots of the similar influencers. Then you've almost found your pool of influencers that you could possibly work with as a kind of starting point. And then I'm sure, and there is lots of ways, I mean, we can talk about it now if you like, but there's lots of ways then you can then work with influencers. But I think ultimately, once you've kind of worked out what your audience wants and who they're looking at and what their behaviors are, then I think it's fairly straightforward and quite easy then to, it is research based, but it's then easy then for you to go off and then find an influencer that would then best represent your brand and your audience.
Thank you. And I would like to talk about different ways you can work with them. But before we do that, and this might be a really basic question, Donna, but is there an ideal audience size for an influencer? I mean, what I mean is, do they need to have a certain number of followers? Is it, in your opinion, easier to get influence on board if they've got a smaller audience? Does it not really matter?
I think, to be honest, so in terms of influencers, I think in terms of the size of the influencer, there are many different sizes of influencers, and I think what we have to bear in mind is that those influencers that are under 10k, they are they're working really hard to get over to that 10k on Instagram, because that then it gives them the swipe up. And just bear in mind, Instagram are talking about giving everybody access to that swipe up function. So it might be over time that completely goes away. But I think what is important for a lot of influencers is that they want to be in those double figures, because they want to be seen as experts or someone credible, etc. And also gives them the opportunity to work with brands. So I think working with a smaller influencer is brilliant because they've got a fantastically engaged audience. They're probably posting every single day, and they're working really, really hard to refine their audience. And also, if you kind of get an influencer in those first couple of years, what you'll tend to find is that they're more open to working on campaigns. You might find that they want to work for a lot lower fee because they understand that they haven't got as many followers. Also, you're going to get some fantastic content from them, and you can maybe steer them in a really nice, gentle way as to kind of what you want out of the partnership. I would say working with smaller influencers are brilliant. I think and also if they're on the up and they're climbing quite quickly, and they're kind of, you've got them from the early stages, you'll have that continued relationship with them for many, many years to come. So I definitely think it's worth doing. And also it's very easy to start conversations with those smaller influencers, because they are so keen to create that online presence, not just on Instagram, but just everywhere. And they want their pictures to be seen on your website and on your news feeds. So I think you'll get a lot of value out of a smaller influencer. With influencers that are over that 10k, I think the mentality is exactly the same. They are, now they can command, a decent fee. But at that same point, they're not really sure what they should be asking for. So again, I think they have that same mentality because they've kind of over the 10k, but they're still growing and they've still got that hunger to develop really good content and align themselves with really amazing brands. So I think it's really, really important to kind of look at them. I think what's important is to look at, if that brand, that influencer best represents your brand. But I think in terms of the size, I think it really depends on how engaged that following is. So you might have an influencer that, she's got 30,000 followers, but she's not getting much interaction. Therefore, she's probably not reaching as many accounts. And I would say she might not be the right person to work with. I think when you're going through your checklist and you found your influencer, look at their recent posts. That's a good start to see if their language is similar to yours. Also look at, I wouldn't always look at the likes because Instagram have given people the option to hide the likes, but look and see if there's lots of comments made in the comments and are people interacting with her post for whatever reason. And if it's a slightly controversial post, or if it's something that delivers a level of value, let's say it's a tip, for example, see what people's reactions are to that. And if she's getting 1 or 2 comments, then I would probably consider not working with her at that time until she's maybe worked out where she is and what she's trying to develop. And there might be other people that represent would represent you in a better way, and give you much more exposure to your brand. But yeah, I would say don't look at the numbers, don't look at the followers, just look at their activity, look how active they are. If they're reposting lots of stuff, if their page doesn't look very inviting, maybe think about using them in the future. But if you want someone super, super good that's going to deliver, don't look at how big their following is unless you need that swipe up to get people over to your website. But remember, one of the reasons why you're working with influencers is to deliver that social proof, which is what I was talking about in terms of giving people trust and loyalty to your brand. So definitely consider how they have a look and see how they do ads. And if you can't see many ads on their page, just see where they're tagged into. And that's a good idea and a good reference point to see the ads they're doing and how they've worked with other brands. There's one more thing, actually, I hope you don't mind me adding. If you are looking for influencers and you're looking in their tagged, so on Instagram, you've got just under the highlights, there's these little images. And one of them is the grid, the next one Reels, one's IGTV, the other one's, what is it? Forgot what it's called now. It's something where you can order all your pictures and stuff. I can't remember what it's called. And then the last one is tag. So it looks like a little tag. And if you go into that, then you can see where they're being tagged into things. And you can see if they've been, if a brand has reshared their content. So you can kind of see almost what the competition are doing and who they're working with, which I think is sort of quite valuable. And people forget that because it's a really good way of kind of seeing their activity, not only on their grid page and on their stories, but also, what else they're interacting with on other pages.
That's such good advice. Thank you. And I guess presumably as well, you could look at products similar to yours and see what they've been tagged in to get an idea of who they've been working with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good one. And you'll notice that lots of bigger brands like the fashion brands and, the household brands, they're tagged into so much content, and the bigger they are, the more people are tagging them because they want to be featured on their pages. So yeah, it's a really, really good one to see. And it's a great way of finding influencers as well. If you look at a competitive brand, you can see a lot of them, some of them will say ad on them if they're being good and they're following the guidelines. But those that genuinely have bought the product and have tagged that person into it, there's a good chance if they're not if they are an influencer, that they are open to collaboration and to working. So you could find people quite easily that way too.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for all of that. And I really like your advice about spending some time online looking. 'Cause something I've noticed actually, sometimes I look at influencers and I see that their day-to-day posts do really well, but then they'll do an ad and that ad gets really little engagement
Yeah.
compared to everything else on their grid, which I've always found really interesting.
Yeah, I think people just don't like being salted, and that essentially is what it is. So they might not, support. They probably do support that ad, but they don't want to like it for whatever reason, and that's okay. And but it is heartbreaking for the brand because they see that
Hmm.
they've got really great likes and really great interactions, and all of a sudden it just goes down. But I think if you look at the reach, if you go into the insights and look at that ad and see reach, that will give you a good indication of how many people from that person's feed has seen that. So it is good, and it's worthwhile, kind of just bearing that in mind. But I know what you mean. It's horrible when you see that they've had like really high engagement and likes and whatnot, and then it goes down. But I think people just get turned off because it is an ad. And I think both you and I know that if you're scrolling through Instagram and you see an ad, you kind of know that it's not been that person would have been guided ever so slightly into coming up with that copy or the image. But I think that brings me quite nicely on to being authentic. I think it's really important that if you are working with a influencer, that they can produce authentic content. And after a while, what you'll notice is that they will create a piece of content for a brand, and they'll get just as good or slightly lower, but generally speaking, fairly good engagement. And that's kind of what you want. And you want that influencer, whoever you work with, to not feel very false, and kind of work out from them if it's something that would feature in their life. I do lots of cooking on my page, and I always, there was a brand I was going to work with, but there was things that weren't quite right for me, and I knew that I couldn't produce authentic content for them. So I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Which was really hard because it was great, and I never want to turn work down, but I think it has to be authentic, and I think you have to kind of ask yourself whether or not that person can produce that authentic content, whether they would use that product or service in their lives on a daily basis. And I think those two things will then give you your answer as to whether or not you work with that brand or that influencer.
Thank you. And actually, that's one of the things I wondered when I saw some of those posts. I did wonder if it wasn't quite if the audience found it a bit not quite a good fit. Because I have to be honest, when you see someone who does influence marketing really well, so for example, I can include you in this, Donna. Sometimes I'll look at somebody's feed and I'll be reading a post, and I don't instantly realize that it's an ad. I mean, it probably says ad. It does. I know that you do have to highlight that they're ads, but it doesn't feel like an ad because it feels genuine. And I think that's the difference. Whereas sometimes you might see an ad and it sticks out like an ad. They don't even need to tell you because it's quite obvious. So yeah, I just wondered if that's what it was about, whether how well it's actually done.
Yeah, I think like an influencer that does it, I think, very, very well is Shell and the Littles. So she's fantastic influencer, and if you look at her page, it does feel like you're walking into some dreamy Californian sunset, and she's based in Cornwall, I think. But she just uses like, it feels like whatever she's promoting on her page, it feels like that's actually what they're doing in real life. And I'm fairly certain Shell does use all those products that she promotes in real life, and that's great for her. But she's actually a brilliant one. Like, if you wanted to work with anybody, she's a fantastic one. I think she's got an agent, but she also works on her own because she knows that she doesn't need to be governed or guided by an agent. She can actually produce nice content without that, and work with brands really nicely. I've worked with her on one of the companies that I worked with, on an events company, and we supplied her with lots of party things for her son's birthday, and it was just done so beautifully. Like, I would have paid a lot of money to get a photographer in and do all of that, but we didn't need to because we know that she produces fantastic content. It was done really, really well. So yeah, I don't mean to name drop these people, but they're really good examples of people that do influencer marketing particularly well. So if you're looking for people, those two, Emma and Shell, are really great ones to look out for. And they work with small brands, which I think is a testament to them looking at the product as opposed to looking at a big brand like the White Company, for example, or someone like that who's got huge budgets and can afford to pick whoever they want. So they genuinely choose people that, I guess, aligned with their brand, but also produce things that they would probably use in their daily lives.
Yeah. And I suppose that's something else you can look at when you're researching influencers. You can look at whether they've worked with small brands before, and I guess that'll give you an idea of whether they might be open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
So what are some of the ways that you can work with influencers?
Gosh, there's lots of ways you can work with influencers. I would say if you're a small brand and you don't have that budget, gifting is probably the first way that you would begin looking and working with an influencer. You can do sponsored posts. So you pay an influencer a fee, an agreed fee between you and them. You gift them the product. You probably would say, look, I'm going to give you a creative steer. So you may say to them, I'd like it shot in really like good lighting. My brand values are this, and I'd like you to mention at least a couple of them in the copy. You might say that you'd want a reel, or you might want a static post. So with sponsored content where you're paying somebody, you can either go, look, I want you to be authentic as you like, go for it and do whatever you like. But if you want some styled content, I think you've also got you can definitely say, I want it styled in this way. But I think if you've got lots of demands and you're asking people to do X, Y, and Z, then be prepared to maybe consider paying them a bit more for doing that. It's not always the case, but I would say just note that. You could also do giveaways, but Instagram have not frowned upon giveaways, but there's some legislation now in place. So just be careful when you do them. There's been lots of talk on Instagram, and I've seen it happen to influencers and brands where a giveaway has been run, and then a horrible cowboy account will come and they will clone that account. So they'll copy that account, and then they'll contact everybody that's taken part in that giveaway to try and get information out of them. So, and then when that's been reported to Instagram have then closed the 2 accounts that have run the giveaway. So what I would say is, if you're going to run a giveaway, just be super careful. Don't use hashtags that say giveaway, contest, anything like that, because you're going to attract those horrible people that are out there on Instagram. But giveaways are a brilliant way to also grow and a great way to start a partnership with an influencer. You can do blog reviews with influencers. So you've got some content on your site, and obviously that will then give you backlinks if you add all the website links. You can also do affiliate programs where you gift them the product, and then every time they feature it on their stories, or if they feature it and people click on the link, and it takes them back to the website, then they earn a percentage. There are some influencers that do this quite a lot. You'll notice that lots of fashion influencers generally do this. Lots of them do it. But there are influencers like me who wouldn't touch affiliate marketing programs, because sometimes brands want you to create lovely pieces of content and it's quite time consuming. Then you post, and then you might only, earn £1 from the sale, which is not really a great incentive. So if you do affiliate programs, think about what that incentive could be. You can also, if you're working with influencers, you can ask them to supply discounts. So if you've had somebody that posts something of yours, in the past, you might say, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to give you a discount and your followers a discount. So if you wanted to repost that or put it in your stories, here's the discount code. If they've got a swipe up function, so people can swipe up to your website, it's a brilliant way to get them there. Also, you might want to run ambassador programs. So you might put a little post out on Instagram to say, I'm looking to take a group of parents on, or influencers, or whatever, however you want to frame that. You choose the best that you think fits your brand at that particular point in time, gift them whatever it is. And then I think generally what people do is they do a cycle of sending them products during certain periods, and then getting people to getting them to promote it on their platforms. So ambassador programs are very good, and it's a great way of developing a relationship. So essentially it's gifting, but it's gifting with a long-term sort of strategy behind it. And then the other thing is paid social access. So you might work with an influencer, you might have worked with them last year, and you might want to go into your Facebook ads and then gain a paid social access through their feeds to then promote old posts of theirs that obviously feature your product. So that's a really good way of reaching their audiences, not only on Instagram but also on Facebook. I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm not going to. But paid social access is a really good one. And I think more and more brands are starting to use it. But with any kind of ads, they're costly and they do take time. And if you are a small brand, it might not be where you want to put your investment straight away, unless you've got a product that you're promoting, that you've created in mass, that you need to kind of churn out and get sold really quickly. Then Facebook ads and paid social access is a really great way to do that.
Thank you. So I guess, especially for small brands with small budgets, so influencers might not always expect to be paid. Is that right? But if you're gifting them products, do they have to use them? I mean, do you gift them on the basis that they're going to talk about them, or do you gift them and hope for the best?
Well, it's tricky. I think when you gift, I mean, essentially that is giving them money because you've given them something. But I think the influencer and the brand both need to be clear about what that gifting means. So if a brand has gifted a product to somebody, they should say, we're really keen to see it or on your feeds or whatever. Or you can say to them, I'm sending this to you, I'd love you to try it, let me know, let me and your followers know what your thoughts are. And the thing with that is you don't have any creative control over that. And it might be that they just put one story up and then that's it, it's gone forever. So I think the way around, getting satisfaction on both sides is to outline exactly why you're gifting that to them, and if you'd hope to see that in the future. I think a way to make gifting work for you is to really get under the skin of that influencer. So comment on their posts, drop a little DM into their DMs when they put a story up. Start developing and nurturing a relationship with them. And then what you'll find is, regardless of whether or not they use your product on a daily basis, you'll find that they will do a lovely job and they will, post content for you. Whether that's an obvious post where, they've said that I've been gifted this, or they might just feature a picture of them with your product, which I think is lovely then, because then it feels more authentic, and then you'll find that people then are more likely to click into it because it's come from a sort of a non-ad space, it's come from a very genuine place. But I think the key with gifting is just to make it clear, but not in a kind of ballsy way. Just say, look, we have this relationship, I absolutely love you, I really want to work with you in the future, I don't have any budgets right now, but I'd love to gift you some of my products. If you're happy, if you don't mind, it'd be lovely to see them on your feed, and then I'd be happy to repost them. So give them reasons why you want that on their feed. Firstly, you want to get to their followers, but you probably wouldn't say that. But what you would say is that I genuinely would, I will repost that, and tell them where you're going to put it. You might put it on Twitter where they haven't got a following, but they're trying to grow it over there, or you might put it on your website. So, that for them is great because they want that exposure. They want to be seen everywhere because they're growing. And it doesn't matter if they've got 10 followers or 10,000 or 100,000 followers. They still want that social proof for themselves. So social proof works, I think, in both ways. But I think developing a relationship first before you kind of go in and gift is probably the best way to get the best out of gifting.
Thank you. And do you have any other advice on contact influencers and how to do it well? Because I guess you only get one shot, really, do you?
I think yes, you probably yes and no. I think the best, first and foremost, the right way to do it is to develop a relationship with them. Engage in their posts, make sure you're regularly attending their posts. So if they're posting every morning, like comment every day, just do it. And then sooner or later that person will start looking at your stuff. You might find they start following you, which is brilliant. but show up to their channels all the time. Just be regular. Take your time out to get to know, they might be talking about something that's going on in their lives. You might want to offer some advice, but the idea is that you're building a relationship up with them first and foremost. I think other ways that you can look for influencers is to kind of look at your current following. I know I mentioned this before, but look at who they're following. There's a drop down actually. If you go onto Instagram, onto that influencer's bio, you will see that there's some contact buttons. So quite likely there's a follow button, there's an email, can't think what else there'll be, but there's a kind of line of buttons. At the end of the line of buttons on the right hand side, there's a little arrow and it's a drop down. So if you click on that, Instagram will give you a suggested following. And what you'll find is based on your algorithm, so your behavior, who you're looking at, what you're interacting with, and their algorithm, the follower that you're looking at, they're going to suggest people that are, someone that you're likely to engage with. So it could be that they suggest a load of new influencers that you can then potentially go and work with. And I think people forget that option is there, and it's a really great way of finding, new followers, but ultimately for you to find influencers that you're going to work with. So it's a really good look at the suggested for you. I know we talked about this, but also to find influencers, look at the competition, look at who they've worked with before, look at that tagged button. And then, don't be afraid to advertise for influencers. You might want to say publicly you're going to start a campaign and you want to work with some amazing influencers, some parent influencers or whatever they are. And just be transparent about that. You're going to get some people that are, desperate to work with you. You're going to get some people who go, oh, actually, I'm not right to work with you, but, Joe Blogs is. So consider that. And then if you are in touch with influencers and you've started building relationships with one or two, and they might not necessarily be the right people for your campaign, or they might be, but you need more, ask them, say, oh, is there any other influencers you'd recommend that perhaps, I could work with in the future? And, generally speaking, everyone is on here to help each other. So you'll find that they're going to suggest all their friends, which is great, because if that is the case and you work with 5 influencers and they're all attached to this one influencer, you get that lovely butterfly effect. And quite often people are following the same group of people. And, if they see that product being used within this group of people, it will be kind of ingrained in the mind, and then they only need to see it one more place or need to be following you, and then it pops up in their feed, and then you're on your way to a sale. So yeah, I would say they're probably the right way to find influencers.
Thank you. And in terms of paying influencers, how on earth do you know what to pay? I mean, or do you offer or do you ask? How would you suggest going about this? Because I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't have a clue how much I should be paying somebody to use my products. It's assuming I was, had a budget and I was happy to pay. Do you just ask? How do you do that?
It's something no one talks about it. It's just influencers don't talk about it to each other. Brands won't talk about it. So it's a really tricky one. But I know when I've worked with influencers, we are, because obviously I've been on the other side, there's lots of influencing apps out there which pay influencers to, run campaigns for them. And they charge, I think it's like 1% of the following. So if I've got 17,000 followers, they would offer me, 170 quid. And I know as an influencer that is, it's okay. It's not the best money because, quite often if you're creating a piece of content, paid content for a brand, you're working to their brief. You'll create, I spend quite often my whole weekends filming content. So that's like 2 days work, I would say. So I charge a bit more than, 170, but I would say maybe look at what looking at what the, how many followers they've got is your first sort of guideline. So let's say they've got 1,200 followers, maybe offer them 120 quid, or offer half that and then see what comes in. And I think also remember a lot of this is negotiation. So it is business. A lot of it is business, and we should think of it like that. Quite often when I work as an influencer for brands, they say I've got a budget, Can you send me your fees? And some influencers, professional ones, I guess like me, have been doing it for a long time. I've got a rate card. But there are some influencers that don't have that, and generally they're the ones that have just started out and they've only been doing it for a couple of years. So I would maybe suggest what you feel like the campaign is worth. If you think you've only got 70 quid or 100 quid or whatever, offer that to them and see what they say. If you're gifting them product, the package could ultimately be worth a lot more. But I think if you've got an influencer that's doing it full time, remember that it's their time. It could be that they've got childcare to do that. They've to work on your thing. It could be that they're running it through. They've been doing it for a few years. So of course, it's their business. Therefore, it goes through tax. It might be VAT. There's all the things that you would have for your business. So I think just bear in mind that. Maybe sort of determine the value in your head, look at your budgets, use that kind of 1% thing that I mentioned, because it's quite a good starting point, and lots of smaller brands do use that, and I've noticed that. And that's a good way of kind of, saying, or if you don't have it, just be open and say, look, I don't have huge budgets, but we're a small business and we're growing, and this is what we hope to do in the future. And this is what I've got. And just, I think you should just kind of go in what you feel like you're going to get out of it, and look at what they've done in the past. And if they're producing beautiful pictures and lovely videos that you think that's valuable content, then most definitely pay what you think you should do. But I don't think there's an answer for that at the moment, because it's slightly unregulated in terms of fees. But I think go with that 1% thing that I mentioned.
So that's really good advice. Thank you. Because like I said, I wouldn't have a clue. And I'm assuming as well, there's no harm in saying to somebody, look, I've only got a small budget. What could you do for this? If I gave you X, what could you do for that?
Yeah.
And like you say, have a conversation and make it a discussion.
Yeah. And I think that's where I've spoken a lot about relationship, building that relationship with somebody. You might find that they'll do it for free, because you've built that relationship up with them and they adore your brand and they want to help you because you're small. And in the future, you might be able to offer them some payment, and that would be great. They'd be delighted, I'm sure. Even if it was £50, they would be over the moon with it, because because they know you and they feel they trust you and you trust them. Over time, all these things. I think lots of brands can gift without paying, but I think if you're looking for specific content that's going to take them a whole weekend to do, I think you have to bear in mind that their time, and they might have bought an editing tool, and they might have bought a laptop especially. So people go, influencers will do it for free, but they might be doing it for free whilst they're just learning and they're starting out. But remember, they're still paying for things. They've still got children to feed and mortgages to pay and all of these things. So there will come a time where they'll say, no, I can't do it for free. And then I think you have to work out what the value of that content is to them and to you, and then you work out what you want to pay.
That's really good. Thank you. It definitely sounds like it needs to be a discussion, and just recognizing that each other is human and has other needs and limited time and limited everything. We all have, don't we? But that leads me on really nicely to my very last question, which is about relationships. And what's your advice about how to build a successful relationship with influencers? Because presumably this could be a one-off thing, but actually it could be a relationship that lasts for years potentially. So how do we get started in the right way and then continue to just nurture that relationship?
I think find your influencer, find someone that you like. Remember that they're probably they've probably got lots and lots of people that contact them on a regular basis. So I think come at it in a very authentic way. You can either be completely honest and go, right, I want to work with you, or you might just want to start creating the foundations of a friendship with them. So as I say, comment on all their posts, but don't I think what people make the mistake of doing is commenting on every single post and really kind of spamming their feed. And then I think people will feel that it's slightly not authentic. So it's quite important to put genuine comments, take the time, comment on one a day, build it up. But don't go through their feed and just spam them, because they're going to be completely turned off by you, and you'll then be a warning to them. And then in their stories, I think people just get a little bit raw in their stories and a bit more honest, or they have a bit more fun with it. I have lots of fun in my stories. that's all I use my stories for these days, is just to kind of show the personality of my family and the brand, and just, you know, have fun with it. And I find that I get genuine feedback from people that do want to work with me. You know, they'll slip into the DMs and they'll say that was funny, or they enjoyed that. And then you'll find that, you know, a couple of times a week, and I think this is probably the right balance, a few times a week, going into stories and watching them and then commenting. And then I think as you start building a relationship, you can just maybe one day say, hey, I'm just about to launch this product. You know, absolutely no pressure, but I would really love to work with you in some way. Would you be open? And see what they say. I would also then say, I'm going to drop you a DM with more detail, an email with more details, and then send them a full-blown email as to what you want and what you're willing to give them, etc. And I think that's the best way to do it, and that's the way you're going to get some, you know, great content, and you could then develop this longer relationship. And if you say that you haven't got any money, but you do want to have a longer relationship with them in the future, you know, be honest and just say it, because they're human just like you, and, you know, their Instagram or their blog potentially is their business. So just be open and honest. I think those open conversations are the ones that go the furthest.
That's really useful. Thank you for that. So just one final question before we finish, Donna, is what is your number one thing you'd like people to take away from this conversation? So someone's thinking about working for influencers, what's the key takeaway you'd like them to have from this?
I think the big thing is to nurture the relationship. Nurture it before you jump into the relationship, you know, by commenting, whatever. But when you're in that relationship and you're working on that campaign together, you know, give them creative freedom. You know, take what they say in terms of you know, the content. They feel they know their audience the best. So if you say I want a reel, but they don't produce reels, that reel is probably not going to do particularly well, unless it's something that's trending and they've jumped on that bandwagon. But I would say yes, you should lead them creatively, but don't but let it be a two-way relationship. I think relationship is the key, really. But yeah, just make sure that you have open conversations about what you want. Encourage them to do the same, because what you'll find is lots of them people please and say yes, we'll do it. But if you're pushing them out of their comfort zone and you're asking to do things they've never done before, you're just not going to get the best out of them. So see what they've done before, maybe reference, oh, I love that what you did for so and so, I'd love it if you could create something similar for me, whatever. And then see where it goes. But I think the key is nurture the relationship and be open and honest.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for everything you shared today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hi, thank you so much for listening. As always, I would absolutely love to know what you thought of this episode. Please do remember to rate and review the show, and also, most importantly, subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And as a reminder, I release a new episode every single Friday. So take care and look forward to speaking to you again then. If you've been inspired to start a podcast in 2024, I really recommend my podcast host, Captivate. Captivate were my top pick when I started podcasting 4 years ago because of how easy it was for a complete novice like me to get started. I've stuck with them for the last 4 years because Captivate is still really simple to use. They keep adding great new features like the ability to share ads like these, and they've just been really reliable. So when you're ready to start your own podcast, you can use the link in the show notes and get a free 7-day trial with Captivate.